Three Men and a Genie, a sort of original story by Spring of Stories. This is the story of three friends, Dave, Doug, and Daryl, who set off one bright summer morning for a simple fishing trip and ended up having the most extraordinary afternoon of their lives. Their boat was a battered aluminum 14-footer called the Petunia. She had a small motor on the back and a pair of oars that nobody ever expected to actually use. She wasn't pretty, but she floated, and that had always been good enough. The trouble began, as trouble often does, with somebody being a little too confident. "I know a shortcut," said Doug. Dave looked at him. "You said that last time." "Oh, this time I'm sure of it." He was not sure of it, and that is how three grown men came to spend 2 days and 2 nights drifting on a wide gray stretch of ocean with no land in sight, no wind worth mentioning, and a motor that had coughed itself dry sometime on the first afternoon. By the second day, things were pretty bad. The sky had closed over into a flat, cold gray. The water had a mean chop to it that kept sloshing against the hull. Dave sat hunched at the bow, barely talking, not because he was angry. Well, he was angry, but mostly because he was scared. He kept thinking about his kids, about his wife, about whether anyone had started looking for them. Doug wasn't doing much better. He'd stopped rowing hours ago and was staring out at the water like he was doing math he couldn't finish. "My tomatoes," he said, mostly to himself. He'd just planted them before the trip. Big, beautiful beefsteak tomatoes. If nobody watered them in this heat, he shook his head. He couldn't think about it. Daryl was rationing the last of the sandwiches. There was not enough sandwiches. It wasn't close to enough sandwiches. It was Daryl who spotted the bottle, dark green, bobbing alongside the Petunia, sealed with a fat cork and glowing faintly in a way that bottles have absolutely no business doing. He reached down over the side and picked it up. "Don't," said Dave. Daryl opened it. There was a sound like a thunderclap inside a tin can, a huge rolling plume of glittering smoke, and then, sitting cross-legged in the air above the water, was a genie. Big, magnificently dressed, wearing the expression of someone who had been in a bottle for a very, very long time and had thoughts about it. "I am the genie of the bottle," he said. "You have freed me. I will grant each of you one wish." Dave was on his feet before the genie had finished the sentence. "I want to go home," he said, "right now, to my family." His voice cracked just slightly on that last word. The crack of the wish sounded like a lightning strike. Dave was gone. Only some glittering smoke remained. Doug stood up. He looked out over the gray, cold water. He thought about his garden, about warm dirt and sunshine and rows of green. "I wish I was home," he said, "in my garden." Another crack. Doug was gone. Only his shadow in glittering smoke remained. The genie turned to Daryl. Daryl had sat back down. He picked up the last of the last sandwich and was eating it with the quiet satisfaction of a man who had made his peace with things. He'd actually been okay out here, if he was honest. The rocking of the boat, the big open sky. It's the kind of nice once you stopped fighting it. He chewed thoughtfully. "Take your time," said the genie, in a tone that suggested he had centuries to spare. Daryl nodded. He looked out over the water. He looked at where his friends had been sitting. He looked at the sandwich. It was a really good sandwich. "Man," he said, chewing happily, "I wish those guys could have some of this sandwich." He swallowed. A beat passed. Daryl slowly turned to look at the genie. The genie slowly raised one eyebrow. Oh no," said Daryl. Crack, crack! Dave reappeared mid-sentence, apparently telling his wife something she would never hear the end of. Doug landed in a heap, dirt on his knees like he'd been on his way to check the tomatoes. There was a lot of yelling. The genie looked at Daryl. Daryl looked at the genie. And the genie laughed. Absolutely huge, helpless, rolling laughter that shook the aluminum hull and threw spray off the water. He laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd seen in 1,000 years. Then the smoke folded back around him and he was gone. The three of them stood there in the rocking silence. Then Daryl, who had already turned to scan the horizon, started waving with both arms, because there, out of the gray, small and pale and absolutely real, was another boat. All three of them started waving. The end.